Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Tuesday night. We had football practice today, and I'm here with you this evening to talk about everything that we saw take place on the field at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. There was Will Levis throwing balls to Calvin Ridley. There was Tajay Spears running behind J.C. Latham. There was Cedric Gray. Well, there wasn't that many starters on defense, actually, so I can't put him with the rest of the vets. But, you know, unless you've got a little Sebastian Joseph Daylust about you, then maybe that's something that you're interested, because Jeff, Sweat, Harold, and L'Jarius Sneed were all not practicing today. So a little lighter on the defensive side of things than it was on offense, but still, we saw a lot of good stuff, and Calvin Ridley was the thing that really shone, I thought, in the one day of media availability that we are able to take in. They had 2 OTA practices. They had one yesterday and a second one today. I believe they have there's a little bit of a voice crack there. I believe that they have another day of work at some point this week. I don't know if it's tomorrow or if they have a day off, but either way, only one day this week was open to the media, and I'm going to give you my takeaways from that one day of practice. Corey D. Jackson says of Calvin Ridley, Agent Zero, a breath of fresh air. I would agree with that assessment, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you guys tonight. You'll hear from Tony Pollard and Brian Callahan this evening, the new running back and new head coach. We'll break down some Calvin Ridley practice footage that we have prepared for you, and Bert's got a gone viral video ready for the end of the show. We're going to have a great time, and we're happy to have you guys a part of it, but you know that we're always looking for new folks. Not that we don't love our regulars. We're like a bar around here. I imagine that most of you would probably be at a bar. I don't know you like that. I shouldn't say that if you weren't hanging out with us here at 7 o'clock. But if you are a regular, we would invite you to share this show to other people who may not know about us or may not have consistently subscribed. Share the broadcast around, and we would be grateful to you for it. If you're hanging out on Twitter, retweet it. Facebook Live, share now to public. That's in the bottom left. And if you're on YouTube or Twitch, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Amar says, cheers, where everyone knows your name. Yeah, I mean, you guys know each other. You talk to each other as much as you talk to me in the comment section. So it is a little bit like a bar around here. I can't decide whether, am I the bartender in this particular situation, or am I the drunk at the bar? I'm not sure. Or am I the waitress, the angry waitress who's constantly chastising and yelling at people all the time and potentially dating one of the patrons. Who's to say? We're happy to have you no matter what kind of bar you think we are. Rooney Glover wants to do shots. All right, this is very quickly devolved into alcoholism, so we might as well go ahead and get the show started before one of you gets too drunk and pees yourself. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. If you're new to the program, welcome. We're happy to have you. And I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the great folks at Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, just 7 miles east of Nashville International Airport, or online at tworiversford.com. You know you can go to TrueMath Fitness for the best workout in Middle Tennessee. You will love the way that they help you achieve your fitness goals at TrueMathFitness.com. And Zen Sports, up to $100 on your no danger first wager. Bet on all your favorite major sports in the Zen Sports app today using the promo code that you see behind me. ATOZTN is what you plug in. Corey D. Jackson says, definitely the bartender. Now, where's the bourbon? I'm not a bourbon drinker myself, Corey. I'm a tequila guy, but that's okay. We've got a full bar back here because we've got actual football players on an actual football field, rookies, veterans, as full a picture as we have had at any point in the offseason of what this football team is going to look like and how it's going to start to build from here. We talked to Brian Callahan, DeAndre Hopkins, Tony Pollard, Peter Skoronski, Sebastian Joseph Day, Tyler Boyd, who's on the radio show tomorrow. For those of you who did not see Tyler Boyd's media availability today, you can listen to him tomorrow at about 11:30 Central Time with me on 104.5 The Zone. And then who else do we do? Oh, Tyler Boyd and Amani Hooker. So we talked to 6 veteran players. We talked to the head coach. And we saw a full practice of what the vets and the rookies working together, not for the first time, but for our first time taking it all in. There was a lot of different observations to be had. Chris Frazier says Jackson already balling out. Who is Jackson specific? What Jackson? Bert just made a face like he smelled something bad, so I assume he's as confused as I am. Jaquan Jackson balling out? Yes, Jaquan Jackson is somebody who had a decent day. He looked pretty good running some routes out of the slot. Didn't see a lot of him. I missed the portion of practice where he was out there returning, but certainly that's in his repertoire. And I think, Kyle Phillips, who was out there working today as well, understands how tenuous his roster spot is because he was out there trying to make sure that he stood out in a meaningful way. Saw some nice reps of the wide receivers against the defensive backs. In fact, that was the primary takeaway. L'Jarius Sneed, though, not available to practice. The list of players who were not available to practice, who were in the facility but spent the vast majority of their time today rehabbing, was L'Jarius Sneed, Nicholas Petit-Frere. You did not see Jeff Simmons, Harold Landry, Tavondre Sweat, or Jalen Duncan. I believe there are one or two more players that I'm missing, but yeah, no Simmons, Landry, Sweat, NPF, Duncan, or Sneed for the Titans on the field during open OTAs earlier today. But for the most part, there was a lot of different things, to dive into. Colton Godwin asks, how is Peter and Radence looking? It's always hard for me with the offensive linemen. They don't have pads on yet, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend for you guys like I'm some kind of offensive line technique expert, because they're practicing things that are very, very important. Their footwork, their stances. Peter Skoronski, we talked to him today about just how hard last year was for him learning how to be in a guard type of stance. You guys, and sometimes us as well, we underestimate just how difficult something like that is for a player who's played left tackle his entire career and who looks good at guard after having a full rookie season to work there. But I'm kind of hold your water a little bit on the offensive line just until they have pads on, which is what I would say about 2 months from now is when we will have padded practices and training camp. Should be a good time. Sean Michael Hayden says NPF going to be forgotten very quickly if he's not on top of every single aspect of his game. Well, you want to be fair to NPF because he's rehabbing and he had a shoulder injury that shut him down for the entirety of the season last year. He sustained that in Pittsburgh on the Thursday night football game. So I don't know. I mean, am I going to bury NPF if he's at the facility and rehabbing, but not out on the practice field because he's doing everything that he's asked to at that point? No. But if he gets outright beaten out for the job and by a better player, then, ultimately that works in your favor. Or if NPF can make strides unto himself, we'll see. There's a lot of time to determine that kind of stuff yet, and it's not going to happen on day 2 of OTAs. But let's start with the biggest takeaways that you had from seeing all the coverage of OTAs today on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. What was your biggest takeaway from Titans OTAs? Let me know in the comment section. We'll discuss together. I'll remind you that your Two Rivers Ford take is made possible by those fine people at Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Whether it's a Mustang, a Ford Bronco, an Explorer like I drive, Ford Edges, Escapes, all kinds of great vehicles, new or certified pre-owned at Two Rivers Ford. They're there to work with you. They're there to work for you. And they're there to make sure that you feel zero pressure throughout the course of the car buying experience at Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. What's been your biggest takeaway seeing the video clips posted, seeing some of the coverage, seeing the quotes, listening to some press conferences? Maybe you've heard interviews. I know Brian Callahan did the Athletics football show as well as Bussin' with the Boys. I think they said they've taped the Rand Carthon episode with Taylor and Will, and that's going to go next Tuesday. I think maybe they'll drop one later this week. I know they've been doing a couple of different stops at facilities and releasing multiple episodes with that, and that's great access, and it's good for Callahan and Rand to endear themselves to the Titans fan base because, there's going to be a lot of Titans fans in a lot of different places that you have to reach out to who may not love the coaching change, or who may not love a lot of the differences that are going on. Although there's a lot to like. We'll see how it ultimately manifests on the football field, but vibe's pretty high right now. But your biggest takeaways at this point from the coverage that you've seen? Chris Young says the Titans have been one of the youngest teams in the past. Do you think with the free agents we have added makes us older and more experienced to handle certain games? Is that a positive element? Well, I mean, it can't hurt, right? L'Jarius Sneed, having been a Super Bowl champion twice, doesn't hurt. It's like Logan Ryan. Logan Ryan, I believe, was a two-time Super Bowl champion when he signed with the Titans that season. And there's no question about the difference that Logan Ryan made and the impact that he had on some younger players on the roster. They brought in Malcolm Butler, too. So there was some synergy among former teammates that they transported to Tennessee and had great success with. Yeah, I think that can help. But there's, Titans haven't been one of the younger teams. In fact, the Titans have been one of the older teams. They are now in a spot where there is a significant amount of youth on the roster, I guess. But you have to think about this. There's so much youth on the roster because you haven't had anybody that you've kept, or that you haven't had many players that you've kept past their first contract. Harold, Jeff, those are really the only examples in recent memory of guys who have made it to second contracts around here as of late. So, veteran experience can always help. It certainly helped them to have Hopkins, but it's more about the player than it is about the experience. But those experiences can help if you make it to those games. But you got to make it to those games first. And, you can't lean on that experience if you're not playing in the AFC Championship game. Or and that, honestly, it's a good question. I don't know how many AFC Championship games or NFC Championship games Hopkins has ever actually played in. I want to say that the Texans made it to an AFC Championship game with Hopkins while they were there, but I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. That's pretty interesting. Boyd may have more. I mean, shit, that's a good point. Ridley wouldn't have done it in Atlanta at any kind of real level because he was after the Super Bowl run that the Falcons made and after Matt Ryan's MVP season. I don't know how much more. I mean, there's definitely Hopkins has been in the league for 10 years. Ridley is coming up on, I want to say 6 or 7 at this point, but of like actual football seasons that he's played, that he's been available to play. But that's a good question. I don't know how many conference championship games Hopkins has ever played in. I want to say at least one. Franco says he's played in at least one. I'll have to look it up after the fact. Either way, biggest takeaways from OTAs. Let's not get bogged down at this point. So I had a few in particular that I wanted to bring to the forefront, but among my biggest takeaways today was Calvin Ridley and how much I enjoy just watching his route craft. He's a really, really high-level player. Super engaging, very consistent in talking to everybody on the field when he's out there taking reps. We're going to show you some of these highlights as well. He's constantly talking to players. He's constantly taking questions and asking questions. We're going to throw some highlights up from the practice field up on the screen, as a matter of fact, and we'll see if we can't do this in a seamless fashion. So Calvin Ridley running routes there, and you see a couple of other receivers who are in line working on their route craft. You see Phillips. You will see a couple of different players here working through. There's Boyd. And just notice the effortlessness in Ridley's routes versus, for example, this is NWI. I believe this is Mason Kinsey that will run this next route. Yes, and no, 87. I don't know who 87 is. I need to learn some of these undrafted and tryout players as well. This is Hopkins, and then followed by Burks. You'll see him in the sweatpants and long tee. But I'll rewind it for you to be able to see Ridley in particular at the start of the drill. We'll see how effortless it is for him to get into his break, get in front of the defender, make the catch with his hands. You see him make the catch with his hands as opposed to trying to catch it with his body. Catch it, the football. You see Kyle Phillips there catching the football with his body, but also using his hands. So you can do it in a variety of different ways. But I like that Ridley attacks the football violently and makes the play there. It's a pretty routine drill, but it articulates a lot of the different things that you like about Calvin Ridley's game and what it is that's going to make him such a valuable asset to this football team. He was one of the bigger standouts from today. And I was looking through some Pro Football Focus numbers on him, just what percentage of snaps he took from the slot, for example, in the last couple of years. So he had his most slot snaps ever by percentage in 2023. He played 128 slot snaps as a Jaguar. His previous high was his rookie season, where he he played 118 snaps out of the slot. He did not catch 118 passes out of the slot. That would be a bit ridiculous. He's a primary outside receiver out wide. Last year, 560 snaps, 81.4% of the time was he split out wide. He's almost never in line with the formation and was able to make a fair amount of plays. He was a very efficient receiver for the Jags last year. He found ways to make sure that he was involved on every snap and that he was at least being accounted for on every route that he ran. He finished the season with some really good numbers, and counting stats aren't everything, but he was effective. There were some inefficiencies to his game, and Trevor Lawrence did throw 4 interceptions, or rather Jags quarterbacks, because I know Lawrence missed some time, so I don't know if all 4 of those picks are from Trevor Lawrence, but they did throw 4 interceptions collectively when targeting Ridley. So there may be some need last year with the Jags offense to force him the ball, but it didn't really feel like that was ever a product of Ridley in particular, as opposed to the quarterbacks trying to get the ball to the best receiver and just making a bad decision or misunderstanding what the defense was presenting to him. He did have drops last year. He had 7 total drops, worked most of them out in the early portion of the season, where he had 4 in the first 3 weeks of play. But then really he only had 3 drops the remainder of the season. And for the most part went, a 6-week stretch without dropping a single pass in his direction. So Calvin Ridley is going to make a difference, and the deployment of Calvin Ridley is going to be fascinating there. Chris Frazier points out that Burks always in the back of the line. Well, he wasn't in the back of the line on that drill. I don't think that that's accurate at all. And by the way, Hopkins was like 3rd from last in that line. So there's nothing really to take away from what order they line up in. I don't think it's that deep. If I'm not mistaken, says Sean, Ridley was somewhat upset that he was used so much in the slot last year. No, he was. The way that I took it, and I don't want to speak for him, but the way that I took it is what Ridley was upset with in Jacksonville was basically the way that the business side of things were handled in Jacksonville. He very much wanted to go back there. He wanted to work with the Jags to find a solution that made the most sense. Seems he liked it there. Seems his his wife and family were comfortable there, which matters a great deal, especially as you get up there in age. You start to have children. Things become more about your family unit than just about you as the individual. And I remember him giving some comments in his introductory press conference about not necessarily being treated like a man in Jacksonville, and that he appreciated how forthright and upfront the Titans were in the limited interactions that he got with them before he ultimately signed. So his usage was not what he was upset about. I think what he said about his usage, if I remember correctly, is that he's a versatile player, and playing with an X receiver like Hop, not an XEX receiver like Hop, because obviously Hop is still playing, but an X receiver. X, you have the X, you have the Z, and I believe they call it the F in the Titans offense, the way that they use the terminology, but more commonly referred to as the slot, and then the Y as the tight end. Ridley is going to be your Z here, where Hopkins can be your true blue X and allow Ridley to be a little more versatile, allow Boyd to be a little more versatile, not just your conventional two receivers on either side of the formation and a slot receiver working in between them. They'll find ways to make it creative with the usage, and I think Ridley's going to be a big part of that. A to Z Sports Prime Time is presented. By the way, you're going to hear from Brian Callahan and Tony Pollard here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is presented by TrueMav Fitness in the Gulch. Your first workout is free as a Middle Tennessee resident at TrueMav. No workout is ever recycled or repeated. They go above and beyond to make sure that you're maximizing your fitness goals without making you feel uncomfortable or overexerting yourself. There is a degree of discomfort getting back into a gym routine if you're somebody who hasn't been as proactive about it or who is looking to make strides personally, not just for your physical health, but for your wellness as well. We all know how much better we feel when we exercise on a regular basis, and TrueMav Fitness is there to find the workout that makes the most sense for you. So get your first workout free at TrueMavFitness.com, the best place to work out in Middle Tennessee. So, who's number 87, says B French. I brought a roster in. I thought, let me see if it's in my laptop bag. Because I have no idea who the hell 87 is. And now this is the time of year where I'm going to be perpetually glancing down at depth charts to try to figure out who the new faces are. Let's go numerically on my practice sheet. Sam Schnee, Schnee. He is a 24-year-old rookie out of northern Iowa, from Dubuque, Iowa. As a matter of fact, he is one of the UDFAs that they brought in this year's class. He is 5'10", 191. 5'10", 191. He's a stocky little fella. 5'10", 191. So he's solid to him. He's got some mass to him, Sam Schnee. But yes, that is indeed Sam Schnee, number 87 on your rosters, but number 1 in your hearts. Rashid Jenkins says that's Sam from A to Z. How about that? Wouldn't that be funny to see Sam Schnee like Eli Manning posing as that college football player a couple of years ago, that ugly ass college football player, and then FaceTiming Peyton as he was making recruiting visits. So there's a lot of different players on the roster. Bryce Erickson wants me to say Sam Schnee 10 times fast. I'm not going to do that. Maybe if I lose a bet, I'll say Sam Schnee 10 times fast, but not today. So there's a lot of different players on the roster, a lot of different looking players on the roster. The practice field looks different, not the field itself, but all the different toys and tools that are out there for the players to utilize and for the coaches to utilize in the teaching elements of their practices. So I'm very curious about a lot of things that are going on OTAs right now. But the question that I'm going to ask you next is, what's the most under the radar storyline going for the Tennessee Titans? What are we not talking enough about when we get into these, we get into certain modes, right? We're wide receiver heavy, we're left tackle heavy, we're quarterback heavy from time to time. What is the most underrated thing, positively or negatively, storyline-wise, that we are not discussing enough? I'm going to give you one that I think is a fun one to keep an eye on here in just a second. You may disagree with mine, but that's fine. I'll read some of yours as well right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN, get up to $100 on your no danger first wager. So that's basketball, baseball, hockey going on right now. The WNBA as well, a great place for you to get up to $100 risk-free on your no danger first wager. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 plus and in Tennessee to bet at zensports.com. So, what is the most underrated storyline of the Titans offseason? Punter, where's Stoney, says Rooney Glover. He wasn't doing much today, but I would be lying to you if I said that I was very hyper-focused on the punter situation, given all the new things at practice. But, it's only one day. If I had multiple days out there this week, maybe I could give you a little more concrete stuff on the punter. But He's not really doing much to date. Calvin Ridley's impact is going to be huge, says Wyatt. Dustin Lee Krantz says Stonehouse and Spears. Tony Grishow says safety is an underrated storyline. Tony, we've talked so much about damn safeties that aren't on your roster. At this point, I don't know how safety could possibly be an underrated storyline. It's the only thing that we continue to talk about as the biggest hole on the roster. Justin Parr says, who's going to be the first down back? Well, what is a first down back? And why? I mean, I don't see Bert's laughing at me and shaking his head. Bert, am I being too reductive? Was that mean? Did I have bad tone? What's wrong? No, don't wave me off. If you have something to say it with your bare naked chest. But I don't understand. I don't know what a first down back is. You're not going to have a first down back. If anything, you would have a third down back. But I think the whole idea of Pollard and Spears is that there's not a specific down back, or that neither of them are a giveaway. You're not going to designate a first down back. David Lee is asking, or he's asking who our Joe Mixon is. Justin Parr says, on the depth chart, LOL, who's starting on Madden? I don't give a shit about Madden. I'm talking about real football. They don't. Yeah. A starter doesn't mean. I mean, starting offensive linemen, I guess, are one thing, but like the starting running back is whichever one of them trots out onto the field for the first snap, for the first offensive snap of whatever game it is. It could be Chestnut one week. I mean, theoretically, probably not Chestnut, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're not going to designate a starting running back. They don't have to. They don't want to. That's not how this offense is going to operate. You want them to be interchangeable. You want them to be not Derrick, in the sense that you know exactly what's going to happen when Derrick Henry's on the field. What you want from Pollard and Spears is the thing that I think is one of the most underrated storylines of the Titans offseason. You want them to be almost totally similar. And that's something that we talked to Brian Callahan about earlier today.
A little bit different route running ability, and Tony's he's a smoother runner. They're both really explosive. Those guys are the ones I'm probably, of all the groups that we have, I think those guys are the ones that are the most exciting for me. Just all the different places you can put those guys in the formation, all the different ways you can get them the ball. In the screen game, in the passing game. Really, really excited about what they've shown so far. Those guys are two really fantastic players. I'm happy we have those guys. Keith.
That's Brian Callahan talking about how excited he is to use both of them interchangeably, and that's something that I caught up with Tony Pollard about after practice today, after his head coach spoke.
It's good for y'all getting out here between the rookies and the vets.
I mean, it's good, just getting out here playing football again. Not so much of the drills, just getting back into the flow of things.
Callahan mentioned the idea of kind of learning how to practice in a new system, a lot of new pieces and parts. How's that been for you guys, and where have you been able to make corrections?
I mean, he's done a great job, just coaching us through the things and easing us through the process of, the coaching change and the way they do things differently. So just getting us adjusted and getting us all on the same page.
He seems really excited about having you and Tajay, and obviously the entire group, but the versatility that both of you bring to the offense. How much are you seeing the framework of that start to take place this week?
I mean, we see it every day, just the ability to catch the ball out the backfield, being able to be so versatile, being able to do so many different things, and just, keep the defense guessing.
Who's got better routes?
I think I'm pretty nice with my routes.
What's your comfort?
That's Tony Pollard. So he feels he's pretty nice on his routes. I think Callahan pointed out that Spears might have a little better route craft, or a little more diverse route craft. I won't say better necessarily, but it'll be fun to see how they complement each other and how the Titans deploy them. I would expect to see both of them on the field. I would expect to see both of them split out wide. I would expect to see both of them getting different kinds of snaps. And basically it varying based on opponent. I don't think that I think the thing that you love about the running back situation is that you don't have to be married to just one anymore. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to make that sound like a criticism of Derek. And when I say that, it comes out of my mouth like it's a problem. Derrick Henry was excellent. And Derrick Henry's overwhelming greatness is why the Titans played that style of football. If you don't have Derrick Henry, you don't play football that way. It's as simple as that. But they're going to work Spears and Pollard interchangeably. And I like the idea that you don't have to be married to just one running back anymore. Now, you weren't last year because Spears is a playmaker. That was something that was very much identified. I mean, Mike talked about Spears week one, basically, as one of their most important and effective playmakers. And maybe that spoke to the lack of playmaking ability that the Titans had outside of Hopkins. But they were talked about, or Spears was talked about right up there with Hop and Henry last year. So I feel that this is a change for the good, even if you have the utmost respect for the way that Derek did it while he was here. You can acknowledge that not everybody is Derrick Henry. So you don't have to play that style of football if they're not Derrick Henry anymore. That's kind of where we're at with these things. Randall Williamson says, remember when Buck said the only reason Amy fired Vrabel was because she was an emotional woman? No, I don't remember that at all. In fact, I bet I would imagine that you would not be able to find a clip like that, Randall, because no such allegation was made by me. But, I look forward to you finding that, because if that was something that came out of my mouth, one, I don't think that it would be that tone deaf, but two, I don't think that shit's real. So, I'll look forward to seeing that in my DMs at some point. Let's see. Destin Lee Krantz says, love Henry, but glad we parted ways to play a different style of football. David Lee says we're mirroring the Dolphins backfield with Mostert and Achane, or is it Achan? Achan is how I say it. Achan, which is just so. I just wish players would correct us more often. It's like Garantano a couple of years ago. Like, this, just tell me how to pronounce your name correctly, and we'll make sure that, unless it's like Chidobe Awuzie, which every one of us is going to botch every time we try to take an attempt at it, and he just gets frustrated and says, just call me Cheeto, and we'll leave it done at that. All right. So under the radar storyline, rather, I think the running back deployment is a great one. I really, really like the idea of how they're going to be used. And it was fun to talk to Tony Pollard and Brian Callahan about that today. Quick reminder that Tyler Boyd is going to be on the radio show. I mentioned that at the top of the show. But for those of you who did not hear that, tomorrow, we've got a pretty good radio show. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, let me double check and see who we have on. Oh, we have the show's attorney, Dan Lust, because Jaden Rashada is suing the holy shit out of Florida. And that is really good news for Vols fans and really bad news for the Gators and everything going on with Billy Napier. So Dan will explain the legalese to us at 10:20, and then we will have Tyler Boyd somewhere at 11:30. Between 11:30 and noon is kind of the window that we're looking out for him. And we spoke to him today in a press conference setting. He should be a good interview. So I'm looking forward to getting to know him a little more. If you have questions, tweet them at me, because I think that the best one, I'm probably going to ask him on the air tomorrow. We'll make sure that we give you guys a shout out. And if you're not subscribed to the radio show, make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the fun interviews that I'm getting ready to do all football season long. All right. Gone viral video is how we'll wrap. Speaking of OTAs, Joe Milton, and speaking of OTAs and the Vols, Joe Milton is going to be a hot button issue for a lot of Patriots fans. And apparently that has already started. So we'll get to the gone viral video with that here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress and get that intel edge you need to succeed. That can only be found with the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators, and that, of course, is GaryAshton.com. All right, gone viral video. It's our good friend Mike Giardi of the Boston Sports Journal on NBC Sports Boston talking about how far Joe Milton can throw.
He's got an absolute friggin' cannon. It is indescribably strong. The arc of the ball, there is none. It just comes out so hot. And Ryan Mallett had a weapon It did. But this is a different plane. And Drake May has a very good arm. He has a plus arm. He probably has one of the best arms in the draft. And you can just see it coming off of Milton's hand in a different way. Like, it's something as stupid as this. I would bet that the RPMs on his throw are off the friggin' chart because it's fun to watch. Look at that. How beautiful is that?
There was a play in practice where he rolled to his left and he flipped his hips and 40 yards. Like, it was just like, dip, just a little flick, and the ball, and it was, to Tom's point, it was on the line, and that's part of the, like, we talk about May and all the things he has to work on. That's part of Joe's problem when people look at him and say, like, everything is one speed. And he doesn't layer throws, like, so there are parts of his game where he's going to have to learn, no, this needs a little more arc, that needs a little less juice on it, but it's worth taking a shot.
Joe Milton going to be a hot button issue for a lot of Patriots fans. Corey D. Jackson says they're going to take the cheese. Drake May is doomed. I think that there is a lot to like about Joe Milton. I don't know if he's going to be able to put it together at the pro level. I hope for his sake that he does, because he's certainly a fascinating prospect. But he's gone to a place where there's obviously no pressure to play. And the developmental curve, for quarterbacks as of late, it's not been great in New England, but this is a new regime, even if it's a lot of familiar faces under Gerard Mayo. And we'll see if they can't get better quarterback play out of not just Joe Milton, but Drake May, because the Patriots and Drake May and Joe Milton, if he makes their roster, are on the schedule for the Tennessee Titans in 2024. All right, that is a wrap for us tonight. Subscribe to 104.5 The Zone on YouTube, because we're doing a new episode of The Install tomorrow night. And we will also have the Tyler Boyd interview up for you. If you're a Vols fan, speaking of the Vols, we had Tony Vitello, the Vols baseball coach, on the radio show today. That was a great interview. Always good to have Tony V. And that's up on the Zone's YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe. Check out the podcast for the radio show and for the install. If you are a podcast, if you're an audio-only person, that's fine. If you don't want to have to look at me, I don't blame you. You can subscribe to the podcast and get it straight to your earbuds, because as offensive as I look, I am much less offensive sounding, even though most of the time I think the offense is on both fronts. Either way, always good to hang out with you guys. Thank you for spending a little bit of your evening here with us, and I'll talk to you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville! Go home!